Good morning, everyone. I'm Marietta Lombard, the Executive Director of the FCJ, and welcome to our FCJ members and community journalists, and to the fact-checking webinar hosted by the FCJ and presented by well-known Raymond Joseph and Rebecca Weber. We all know the internet makes it easy for people to access information with only a few keystrokes. It also makes it easy to spread false information, and this we know can have disastrous effects on individuals and society. And for this reason, today's training and the importance of fact-checking is undeniable. For those of you, I'm sure many of us know, Raymond is a freelance journalist and a journalism trainer. He's also the former head of the media program at Data Journalism Academy at Code for South Africa, which is a Cape Town-based civic tech NPO that uses data and technology to drive social change. Ray is also a former Knight International Journalism Fellow with the International Centre for Journalists, and he's a veteran of South African print newsrooms. Rebecca is a freelance journalist based in Cape Town. She covers social justice, the arts, environment, business, travel, and more for the likes of CNN, Marie Claire, New York Times, USA Today, and the Wall Street Journal. To Rebecca and Raymond, your audience today and the guys you will be engaging with are not only community journalists, but they're stakeholders in the communities they serve. And we are passionate about our role as community watchdogs. The FCJ directors thank both Raymond and Rebecca for putting time aside to engage with us on this important aspect of journalism. And I'm confident that after today, the community journalists will have the necessary tools to strengthen their capabilities as watchdogs in their respective communities. And I will now hand over to Ray and Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Marietta. I really appreciate that. And good morning to everyone. We are so glad to be here. And I see that you're already, so many of you are already in there in the chat, letting us know who you are. And if you haven't yet done so, please do just put in the chat, let us know your name and what publication you're with, so we have that for record, and also to sort of get a sense of how broad the scope is here today. Look, we're going to be looking at a lot of really practical tools, things that you can start using straight away. And I just want you to know that you are going to be getting a resource sheet with everything, all the tools that Ray is going to cover, as how to find them, as well as additional links. You'll get all of that afterwards. As Ray mentioned, didn't want to overload you up front and don't want you necessarily being distracted. We want you to be able to focus in your attention today. I just want to say, in terms of a few quick housekeeping things, make use of this chat. That's going to, in just a moment, I'm going to be quiet and going to be listening to Ray as well. And I will keep my eye on the chat. Any questions that you have, please drop them in there. We're going to have a lot of time for customizing this info so that you can ask, how does this apply to my story? How does this apply to my phone? How does this apply to my community? This is going to be the time for that. In the meantime, we're going to ask you to keep your video and your audio off. If later on during the Q&A sessions, if you want to come on, turn your video on or turn your audio on, you're more than welcome to do that. And if you just want to ask your question in the chat, I can always read it out loud for you as well. We are going to have a comfort break. We'll see what the natural breaking point is, but probably in about 75 to 90 minutes from now. So we can have like that 5 minutes, whatever you need to do, and then we'll regroup again afterwards. But again, in the meantime, please do introduce yourself. Let us know who you are, what your role is, what your publication is. If you have any questions, drop them in the chat as we go along, and you will have access to the recording, which you're welcome to share with people, and you will have access to additional resources and everything that you need to know to take the tools that are going to be introduced to you today moving forward. So I'm going to turn things over to Ray. Good morning, Ray.
Morning, guys. So if you've got any questions, ask them and ask them at the appropriate time so we can deal with them then. There are no stupid questions. Okay, it's the one that you don't ask. As simple as it might appear to you, ask it. It's the only way to learn. Okay, and without any further ado, let's go here. So fact checking. Hopefully, you guys are already doing fact checking. It's no different for when you hand in when you hand in a story, when you hand in something digital to be published, you're not going to hand it in if you haven't checked it properly. You're not going to hand it if you haven't given a right to reply. This is no different. And what I would say to you is, don't think of fact checking is this big thing, scary thing. It should become automatically part and parcel of your protocols as a journalist. Towards the end, what we're going to do, so for the moment, what we're doing is we're doing it on a big screen. Towards the end, I'm just going to dedicate a bit of time to show you how to set up your phone for fact checking, because very often we're working on a phone, we're out in the field, we want to fact check something, and we're looking at social media and online on our phones, not necessarily on our computer away from work. So I'm going to show you how to use your phone, and it really is very easy. Okay. You seeing me there, okay?
We see you. There is a bit of extra around it, but we see the document. I think you're okay as you are.
Okay.
Yes.
Right, perfect. So that's what we are. We're digital detectives. So fact is a statement that is true and it can be proved with evidence, and the test is, can it be verified? And while everything we are doing is evidence-based, we're not scientists, but we are using facts and evidence to verify. So just, it's not funny, but a bit of a joke. So this is a TV show called Facts Don't Matter. And I'm sorry, Jeannie, your answer was correct, but Kevin shouted his incorrect answer over yours, so he gets the points. And that is what social media has become, is the one who shouts the loudest gets heard. So, by the way, the ones who are shouting the loudest, I hope everyone knows here, don't argue with a troll, don't feed a troll, because that's what they want. Every time you answer them, they are waiting for that. So this is an American thing, but it applies in many ways here. So on a big breaking story, be aware, in the immediate aftermath, in the chaos, straight after there's been a shooting, straight after there's been a plane crash, the media will get it wrong. They've got a report, they're talking to people, they're speculating, and there's nothing more dangerous. I tell this to PR people, there's nothing more dangerous than a journalist without information, because then they start, it's like a mine disaster, and they make all the journalists stand at the mine gate and won't let them in, and don't talk and don't give information, so they start interviewing each other, because they've got to come up with a story, particularly radio and television. And you've seen how those people struggle sometimes filling dead air because they don't have information. Don't trust anonymous sources. Don't trust another news outlet as a source of information. Now, as I'm going along, these are things to look out for. So when you're reading a story, so I always hyperlink. When I write a story, I link to my evidence on the basis that people who are reading my story should be able to go to those links and verify it themselves. They can check up on what I have said is correct. But so sometimes what you'll see is a story about quoting the Citizen, the Guardian, the Limpopo Mirror, whatever. And there's a link there and it says the Guardian. And when you click on it, what it does is it takes you to their homepage. That is a red flag. A link should take you directly to the story. And sophisticated people who are trying to mislead, to give it the impression that it's important, and they'll say, as reported by the New York Times, and they'll link to it. but it takes you to the New York's website, and you've got no way if you're not seeing the story. It's a serious red flag. Watch out for it. So there's the American. There's almost never a second shooter. Anyone who knows about what goes on in the States, going back to John F. K. and Booth, who shot Lincoln, there's always talk about a second gunman. When you're reading a story, pay attention to the language the media is using. We're getting reports. That could mean anything. Getting reports from who about what? We are seeking confirmation. Actually means they don't have confirmation. They're going with unverified stuff. Sometimes you'll hear news outlet X has learned. That either means that they've got a scoop, or they're actually going out on a limb and they're flying a kite because they're not sure. You know, catching in this way, you've got to be very careful when they're not specific. Learn from a source who works in the presidency rather than has learned. Look for, on a big breaking story, look for a news outlet closest to the story. So if the story is happening in Cape Town, Johannesburg, Bloemfontein, try and get to the local media there, to the local live stream on the local on the local radio station. If it's happening in another country, go to a publication from that country. For example, if it's happening in France, go to Le Monde. And then what I would urge you to do is to download Google Translate. So listen, I just wanted to say, guys, I don't work for Google. Google doesn't pay me anything. But Google has invested very heavily in tools for journalists and for fact checking. So I stick with the Chrome browser. And unless you've got a serious problem with Google, I would urge you, because that's where most of the really good tools are. And Apple iPhone, you can run a Chrome browser. On your computer, you can certainly run Chrome, and on your laptop. So I would actually urge you, and then just go and download, go to your local, go to either it's going to be the God, I don't even know what Apple's app store is called, or the Google App Store, and download Google Translate. And Google Translate will then appear in your right click. From then on, when you right click on the story, and just go down to Google Translate, it'll translate it into English. You then have an opportunity. It says always translate French, German, Russian, whatever to English. It will do it automatically. The other thing is Google Translate will end up in your web browser. And if you're on a web page, all you do is you click on Google Translate and it will translate it. So always go as close to the source, like in journalism. We get as close to the source as possible. Always compare multiple sources. Don't go with a single source. And if you're writing a story and sources are contradicting themselves, like with any journalism, report the contradictions. If you don't know what is correct, sometimes you've got to report the contradictions. While the Hawks were saying this, the SIU was saying something else. So this you can take poison on. Big news brings out the fakers and the photoshoppers. They straight, the moment something happens, they are straight out of the gate. So Dudazili Zuma the other day, Zuma's twin daughter was stirring on Twitter again and making veiled threats about how the country will burn again if her father is arrested. And she used a photograph, a very graphic photograph of a silhouette figure giving the Black Power salute and buildings burning in the background. Well, a quick reverse image search there will take you back to a Black Lives Matter protest 2 years ago in an American city. So be aware that part of the issue, the picture might not be manipulated, and we'll talk about it more, but the picture might be used out of context. So the picture is correct, the video is correct, but what it's claimed to be describing in what you're seeing may not be correct. And then beware of reflexive retweeting, resharing. If you haven't checked it yourself, if it doesn't come from a trusted source, and I would hope that your publications are trusted sources, so that when people link to a story from yours, it's a trusted source in Middelburg, in Bloemfontein, in Cape Town, wherever you are. So you can be part of the solution by not sharing stuff that you haven't checked, that is not from a credible source, or you can just reflexively share and become part of the problem. Now, what you'll often find on Twitter, by the way, is people who don't have a lot of data, and data is an issue for them. What they'll read is the headline in the first paragraph and retweet it without reading the story. And we know how clickbait works. The headline says one thing and the story says another. Never ever share something that A, you haven't read yourself, and B, you haven't checked yourself. And if you haven't checked it, that you're happy that the source that you're sharing with is credible. So a few things to remember. If it's fake, it can't be news. I just got this thing about fake news, and which Donald Trump made up, but it seems to have become the language. It's better to refer it as misinformation or disinformation. Now, the difference between misinformation is where the reporter makes a genuine mistake. They genuinely make a mistake and there is no malice intended. As damaging as it is, there's no malice intended. Disinformation is where people set out to, on purpose, mislead. And very often it's around political stuff. Rather be right than risk getting it wrong in the race to be first. So social media has made journalists' brains soggy. They would never hand in a story for publication or for broadcast that they hadn't checked properly, that all their sources were right, whatever. And yet with social media, there's this race to be first. Just bear in mind, people will not remember you for what you got right. They'll remember you, they're more likely to remember you for what you go wrong, and you'll damage your credibility. So don't rush to be first. The story ain't going away. And the point being, so check 3 times before you tweet or post once. It takes years to build your reputation. Don't throw it away with a single dumb tweet or a post, because that's what people will remember you for. Once it's out there, you can't take it back. So I can tell you, and hopefully you guys will become like that, is I can pretty much find something that's been republished, something that has been deleted. With websites, and it'll be on the list of tools that we're going to give you, there's a tool called Wayback Machine. And the moment that when you delete something, if you're on the web page, you download Wayback Machine and you've got to right click on that page, it will take you back to earlier versions of that page. So when you mess up, it ain't going away, guys. beware, a real picture from an unrelated event is often used out of context. You're often seeing this in the Middle East, with Israel, Gaza, Palestine, Syria, where they are genuine pictures, but they do not relate to the current thing that they're being used for. And as I said, that Duduzile tweet, 2 years old, totally unrelated. Okay, so these are tools that we're going to go through. We're going to look through as we're going. And then tools are only an aid to help you with the heavy lifting. You still need to do the heavy lifting. You still need to do the journalism. And I would hope that we as journalists have got very good bullshit detectors. I would imagine that most of you, sorry, there's a person who keeps phoning me and I keep cutting him off. So if it doesn't seem right, trust your gut. As journalists, we develop that gut instinct, and sometimes we're wrong, but trust your gut. So fake comes in many guises. A false connection. So this is clickbait, when headlines, visuals, or captions don't support the the content. So you click on something and the story is completely different, but all you're doing by clicking on that is you're being driven to a website that is selling those, do you want to lose fat overnight? You know, those really wild stuff. Learn how to pick up men, learn how to pick up women, all that kind of clickbait. And how they make their money is when you click on it and goes to the website, people who then put that dodgy content, they pay to put the dodgy content on those websites. And the charge is worked out on the number of clicks. So every time you click on clickbait, you are making you are making a fraudster's ring, because there's another one. So if they've got 1,000, they charge per 1,000, and the more clicks they get, the more they're going to charge people to advertise. False content. When genuine content is shared with false contextual information, it's what we were just talking about. Photograph, a genuine photograph does not relate to the event, or video does not relate to the event on which it's purported to be. It's an old picture. Manipulated content, when genuine information or imagery is manipulated to deceive, well, that's when something is being photoshopped, or where someone takes genuine information and twists it. Satire or parody. There's no intention to cause harm, but has potential to fool. Now, very often parody sites will say they're parody. Go and have a look. A good place when you go to a website is go to the About section. Go to the About section, and if it's a genuine parody site that is not actually intending to mislead, it'll say that it is parody. Misleading content, misleading use of information to frame an issue or an individual. That's literally making something up to damage a person. Imposter content, when genuine sources are impersonated, particularly with Twitter. Have a look at the Twitter handle and make sure. So at one stage, there was a Twitter handle at radio, and it had RADIO 702. There was at 567. What they do is they manipulate. It looks like, at a quick look, it looks like the right one. So just check it. look at the URLs, and I'll show you examples of dodgy URLs when we come. And then new content is 100% designed to deceive and do harm. So I've certainly, my lottery reporting being a direct victim of that, where totally false information is made up and is then spread. It's then spread by bots and sock puppets. So a bot is automated that is retweeting or repushing, and a sock puppet is actually a human doing the job of a bot. It's a human being hiding behind it. So spotting fake news. Consider the source. So click away from the story to investigate the site, its mission, and its content info. So besides the story, just go and look at the website. What do they say on about? Are there contact details? Is there contact email? Is there contact phone number? Is there an address? So really, one of the ways to judge a source is to judge a story is to judge the veracity and the credibility of the source. Read beyond the headlines. So headlines can be quite outrageous, clickbait. Read past the headline, read the full story. Check the author. If it's by Raymond Joseph, go and check Raymond Joseph, journalist, South Africa. Go and check who I am. Very often on a credible site, on the byline where it says Raymond Joseph, if you click on it, it's a hyperlink to other work I've done. So make sure that the author is good. Supporting sources. Again, that's that one where they link to the New York Times, and when they click on it, it takes you to the New York Times website. It doesn't take you to the actual story. So one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest mistakes, so you've all seen something goes viral and it says that someone famous has died. And then suddenly everyone has tweeted about it. Check the date, because very often what's happening is the person who shared it is not necessarily doing it with malice. They've just suddenly come across it that this famous person has died. They've not checked the date, they tweet it, or they share on Facebook. Other people see it, they don't check. Always check the date on the website. Now, a trick, if there's no date on the website, that's a red flag. But if you go and look in the URL, very often in a URL, you'll find a date. Not always, but you'll find a date in the URL. Is it a joke? Is it satire? Research the site and the author to be sure. Check your biases. So one of the biggest problems that we have to deal with when we fact-checking our own biases. So check your own biases and be aware of it. If you are someone who doesn't want to have a vaccination, and you are now tweeting information about the dangers of vaccine without actually going to look at the search, that is your own bias coming into it. So be aware of your bias, and anyone who says they're not biased, sorry for you, but we all are. We all have our prejudices, we all have our history. And then the final thing is ask an expert. Don't only fact check. If it's a story about, pollution in rivers, go to an expert and ask them. Don't just rely on the internet. So very quickly, I'm not going to stay with this, but this is a journalist who set out to see how easy it was to con journalists. And it was way back in 2015. And what he did is he made up a story about how eating chocolate helps you lose weight. And it was quite an elaborate hoax, because he then went and produced what appeared to be an academic paper, which he published. So if people checked up on it, they would arrive at that paper. And this story was widely published in multiple publications around the world. All they had to do is Google John Bohannon, and they were discovered that he actually wrote about the con. So people took it at face value. If it's too good to be true, it often is. When you're assessing a website's a web source, currency, is the story current? It's not an old story. Is it relevant to what you are checking, or are your biases coming in that you think is relevant? Check the accuracy of a website against other sources. The authority. What authority does this website have? Is it someone claiming to be a doctor talking about a medical condition? Or is it the Mayo Clinic talking about it? A world famous clinic with a long history of academia. And then purpose is very important. So sometimes you're going to read something that's going to make you very angry. It's going to make you sad. It's going to make you upset. So very often with this fakery, that is the attention of playing to your emotions. So someone who's raising money for animals and publishing all these pictures of animals being slaughtered and that sort of thing. They're playing on your emotions. They may be correct, but red flag, check it. Put away your own emotions. And then the other thing is, if it's too good to be true, it often is. So the picture on the right, that's a genuine picture. It's actually a genuine photograph. The picture on the left, so I don't know if you ever remembered, and this thing appeared in many guises, sharks on a flooded freeway in Los Angeles. It was Costa Rica, it was all over the world. The two sharks are the same shark. And what they've done is they've superimposed the shark on the right into the picture on the left. So I actually stumbled in that and then checked and did comparisons. It's the same shark. So when you're verifying on Twitter, because we do depend on Twitter a lot for story ideas, and we do depend on Twitter a lot. I hope that you guys do not do stories just based on what is being said on Twitter. Twitter is like a press release. It's like a source. It's like any other source. It is a source. It is not the source. I can only speak for the Cape Town papers, and particularly the Argus, have this habit of writing entire stories based on tweets, on what people are saying on tweets, and not doing their own fact checking. So first prize, speak directly to the source, the person who's tweeted. Ask for the off Twitter contact details where you can speak in private, be it a WhatsApp number, be it an email address. Ask if they witnessed the incident firsthand or just heard about it. So very often people who are tweeting something are not out there to mislead you. I'm talking about civilians. Did they witness it firsthand? And very often if they didn't, they'll say, no, I heard about it. Ask who else may be a witness. So there's been a demonstration, the police have shot at demonstrators. That other people will have been videoing and photographing it. Another thing is to ask a person when they put a picture out there is, do you have any other pictures? Because people are highly unlikely to take one picture. You're going to take a bunch. So it's helpful to know for the veracity of that picture, they can show you other pictures they took at the same scene. It's not a single picture. And if it's someone else's picture, they're highly unlikely to have lots of pictures. So that's the way of verifying. Ask him if they've got video. So does the tweet have a geolocation? Unfortunately, this doesn't work very well because most people switch their geolocation off. But if it's on at the bottom of the tweet, it will actually say where the tweet is coming from: Cape Town, Durban, Hong Kong, wherever. Does the tweet sound authentic? So poor grammar, spelling, and typos could indicate there's a real person. So because it's not 100% correct, think of yourself typing in haste and there's all kinds of drama around you. You could well make mistakes. You could well misspell a word. So just because a thing is, unless it's in pidgin, unless if a tweet or a Facebook post is not perfect, that should not necessarily count against it. It just means more checking. Do a Twitter search, putting hashtag in front of it and play around. Hashtag Middleburg demo, hashtag Zondo, whatever it is, play around and see who else is tweeting about it. Also Google it. If some odd person is Googling about something and they're unconnected, go to media who should be reporting on it. And if it's a big story and media aren't reporting about it, doesn't mean it's wrong. It means advance with extreme caution. Crowd says, ask for information. That's one of the beauties of Facebook and Twitter, is you can ask people out there for information about an incident. And don't be afraid to say what you don't know. I don't know how many people were involved, how many police, because that often will give an indication to people of what you're looking for. Check what people are wearing. So in a photograph, in a video that is supposedly photographed late after, videoed or photographed late afternoon in Bloemfontein in the middle of winter. And there are people in shorts and short sleeve shirts and sandals. So look what people are wearing. Does the clothing that they are wearing, is that clothing from the area where they claim to be? So this is particularly relevant when you start looking at the Middle East, where people have a different style of dressing. Blow up, sometimes if it's a picture, blow it up, look at the number plates. Are those number plates from the area where this thing is supposed to be coming from? Look at billboards on the side of the road. It's supposed to be South Africa, but it's in Arabic, or vice versa. Shop windows. Look at the signage in shop windows. Look beyond the obvious of what you can see there, because in the background there are clues. Google Earth is fantastic. Google Earth is absolutely fantastic for finding places. Again, in my lottery investigation during lockdown, I was traveling extensively by Google Earth. And Google Earth has got a very neat, if you're investigating in your municipality, a building that is taking ever to be built. Look at Google Earth. Google Earth has got actually a time slide at the bottom, and go back in the years, and you can pretty much begin to work out the year. Sometimes it tells you the month of the picture, sometimes only the year. And you can see that your municipality spent 50 million rand on something. We've gone back to in 2017. 2017, there's nothing. 2018, there's nothing. Suddenly in 2019, there's sign of building, and 4 years later, it's finished. So don't be intimidated by Google Earth. It's a really cool tool. And once you get used to, if you've got a property address of a house where someone is living, have a look at that. Just be very careful of linking that Google Earth into a story, because with Popia, you're giving away people's addresses. And then there's a tool called Wolfram, and it's on that list, called Wolfram Alpha. You can ask it questions. How far, how long, how high? It's absolutely, you ask it straight questions. So Wolfram was one of the earliest, Mr. Wolfram was one of the earliest search engine guys. He went the computational route, but computational fact checking. So with the weather, if you go to Wolfram Alpha, don't do it now, .com, and take your birthday and say, what was the weather in Durban, and give your birthday. It'll give you a complete rundown on what the weather was on that day. If you know the date of a photograph and it's pouring with rain, and you go to Wolfram Alpha and you ask what was the weather in that place on the day, and you see it was the sun was shining all day, you immediately know that that picture either wasn't taken what it says it was taken, or it wasn't when it was taken. But it's a fun exercise. So if you want to know, if you have Wolfram Alpha in your browser as a browser extension, you just go there. How long, how high, what is the distance? It's fantastic. So reverse image search is a tool that we will go back to just now. We're going to play with a bit. Everything that I am showing you is free. There are no paid for tools that I am sharing with you. Okay, video Vault, I was having a problem with this morning. But what Video Vault goes, and again, there's a link and I can get to directly from my browser. But what it does is, when you're on a page with a photograph, if you take that, you've got to register for it. It's very easy registration. You then email the link of the YouTube or the video to them, and what they send you back is, first of all, a link that even if the video is removed, you've got a copy. There is the video. You can play the video slowly. You can play the video fast. You can go backwards. You can tip it on its side. And what you can also do is take screen grabs out of the video, and beneath it, you can't see, but these are all screen grabs here that they send me back. And at the bottom, it says do a reverse image search. So you can reverse image search to find out where that video came from. Unfortunately, like with pictures, if it's too generic, you're going to have a problem. Again, I'm going to show you this tool. This is a fantastic tool. So before Donald Trump and after Donald Trump, something changed. These advanced tools for fact-checking were very expensive, and only the very, very big newsrooms could afford it. Post Donald Trump, a lot of institutional money went into developing free tools that took away the big guy's magic. So this is a free tool that anyone can use. Fake sites. So this one, so they're killing off Desmond Tutu. But can you see what's happened in that URL there? They've changed the I in Times Live to T1. And at a quick glance, it's one of those that I was talking about. At a very quick glance, that looks like Times Live. Always check the URL. They're killing off Mbeki. Now, why? In these cases, just do a Google. If Desmond Tutu or Thabo Mbeki had died at the time these went out, everyone would have been reporting it. Not someone who is no one sitting in their bedroom nowhere. So sometimes it's a hoax, but often it's clickbait to drive traffic to this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. 22 movies where they really did it. Amazing method, burn fat overnight. hurry before this video gets banned. And so what has happened is all these videos are on a website and they've been paid for. Someone has paid for them to be there. And the owners of the website work out how much to charge based on the number they click. So as I said earlier, every click makes their till ring. Okay, let that sink in. Eh? If you're not sure, just don't do it. Tonight, so these are the tools that I'm going to be showing you. TinEye reverse image search. So I mean, have a look at this one. This was a single photograph. So when I investigated, so there is this rather buxom woman without a bra in a photograph. This is the picture that was going around, and that's the picture it came from. And they've joined two pictures together. Sorry. So if you have a look at this picture, some dead giveaways. Remember, I was telling you, always look at a picture, look beyond the obvious. So, I mean, would the Pope really be in public like that, staring at a woman's boobs? It's not going to happen. Would the Pope's assistants or the people around the Pope allow a woman dressed like that into the Pope's presence? Highly unlikely. Now look at the background. You can see there's two different backgrounds. There appears to be a curtain here, and then there's kind of a wall over there. So what this picture actually is, and I'm going to show you how to do it. It's very easy. So she's an Italian porn actress, and someone has photoshopped the Pope into the picture and turned the Pope into a pervert. And if you guys understand the questions that I'm asking, you know, would the Pope really be staring at a woman's boobs like that? Would a braless woman be allowed into the Pope's presence? Look at the background, all of it. This thing has got so many red flags. So just to show you how often this happens. So I don't know how many of you saw this, but this is supposedly President Zuma, when he was still president, on his way to Pretoria for a meeting. And if you ever look at the shape of these, it's like, use your imagination, it's in the shape of a penis. Now, the first red flag in this picture is supposed to be President Zuma. So look what side of the road they're driving on. They're driving on the right-hand side of the road, just for a start. I have never seen President Zuma in that kind of vehicle. You know, they use those black BMWs with shaded windows. It doesn't even look like a car. This same picture has gone around the world. Sorry, and there it's supposed to be Vladimir Putin's motorcade. I've seen it for Australia, I've seen it for New Zealand. And now here is a very simple trick. How I got to the BuzzFeed thing is I said, Vladimir Putin, and then in caps, motorcade shaped like a penis, and then fact check. And that's very often the quickest way to do it. Very often stuff that you're trying to check has already been fact checked. All I did is I did a Google search and it brought me to this BuzzFeed fact check. So very often, the quickest way to fact check something is first of all start with X arrested for pedophilia, for example, fact check. And very often that's being fact checked. That is Putin's motorcade. I think there might be another one for someone else's motorcade. So here's a very good example. So when Osama bin Laden was taken out by the Americans, this guy tweeted, helicopter hovering above Abbottabad at 1 a.m. is a rare event. Now, when you go to this guy's timeline, when you are checking on the veracity of his source, when you go to his timeline, what you'll discover is this guy's in IT. He's living in a village. He's tweeting about village life. He's tweeting about IT. It's not a fake post that has just been made up for this. So you are able to verify from his timeline that was the very first tweet the night that Osama bin Laden was captured and killed. And just by verifying his timeline. Fake pictures all over. So there's your default. And we're going to come back later on. We'll come back to this. We're going to do some practical exercises. So what I'd like to ask is, before I go on, are there any questions, guys? Does anyone have a question? You can put your hand up if you want to ask before I move on. Okay, speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay, I'm moving on. So I've got some order worked out here. Excuse me.
While you're getting that next bit, Ray, I'll just say, I saw we had so many people coming in, and I know that there was a little bit of confusion about the start time being 11 or 11:30. And so we had a few more extra people, actually quite a few more people come on at 11:30. If you haven't yet introduced yourself, please do make use of that chat. Just let us know who you are, what your name is, what your role is, your title is, and what publication you're at, where in the country you're at. We'd love to get a great sense of who's here. We're going to take a comfort break in a little while, but for right now, we're going to just continue on with our training. If you do have any questions for Ray, you can drop them in the chat, and I'm keeping my eye on that. And otherwise, you're also welcome to raise your electronic hand. We want to make sure that we're able to customize this training to you, to your questions, your stories, your newsroom, your community.
Yeah, so that is really important. So sorting facts from fiction. Sorry, Becky, can that be seen?
Pretty much just the very top of it is cut off a little bit.
Yeah, okay, no, that's correct.
Okay.
So, and then I want to find okay, so and now you can see the 5-step fact check, right?
We can see it. We can't see all 5 steps, but I think as you scroll down, we'll be able to see it all.
No, I'm going to scroll down. I've made it big on purpose. So this is my Africa check. And what I'm going to do is, with the stuff that you get, there will be a high resolution printout of this thing. I would recommend that you print it out and stick it above your desk at work or at home. So can I fact check this? If the answer is yes, so how do I know if I can fact check it? It can be verified or proven using publicly available, credible information. So the information has got to be publicly available and it's got to be credible. My next step to ask is, what's next? So the next thing you want to do is when you fact checking is identify the original source and verify the content. So try and verify the exact wording of the claim. Do this by seeing if you can find videos. So very often these days, when a public official speaks, there's going to be a YouTube video. In South Africa, certainly every government department has its own YouTube channel, and including Parliament has its own YouTube channel. When you're searching for whatever the claim is, Ramaphosa says, and whatever the outlandish claim, Ramaphosa says, and then what the claim is, and then put YouTube and see if you can find YouTube of it. Media release, Ramaphosa says, and media release. So it's basic Googling, playing around and seeing whether you can find the actual media release or video and see if they were able to and see if the wording is correct or if they actually said that. Alternatively, contact the person or organization quoted to confirm whether they quoted correctly. If you can't find the proof in the video or audio, and who or what their source was. So, I mean, journalism 101, we always go back to the source. We always give people right to reply. Our next step is to contact experts in the field. Because now what we're wanting to do, so now we know that Cyril Ramaphosa actually said that. Now we're contacting experts in the field to verify with them that the information is correct, or if it's correct, just to clarify it so that when we report, we can report it in human and not in technical stuff that's difficult to understand. You should always be asking when you're speaking to experts of any additional data sources or research you should consult. So I always do that in an interview, or not always, but very often do I say to people, is there anyone else who I should be talking to? Becky, apparently there's some questions there. If they relate, they go ahead. Otherwise, I'll work through this.
We have a couple of good questions. I also have one that's in my DM as well. I'll ask them to you, and let's see if you want to address them now or think about them as we come to them.
Sure.
One is from Werner, who asks, as far as copy editors are concerned, with whom does the buck stop as to fact checking? Should copy editors rely totally on the reporter for accuracy? Really great question. And also we have from Stephen from Mapapeza, who asks, my question is what to do with clickbait news sites like the South African and Opera News? Do we like them or what?
We don't listen, so we don't like them and we don't use them as sources. And so the problem with Opera News is anyone can publish on Opera News. And when you go to Opera News, and also there's a lot of copyright contraventions. If you search your publication, Opera News, you'll be shocked to see how much of your stuff they're stealing. They don't do anything about it other than they remove it, but they carry on. So I know that Anton van Zyl, they've been stealing his copy. And he's tack on, they said, oh, you got to complain every time. And he eventually found the right person, but they were overseas and he got nowhere. So he's just got a Google alert who keeps checking up on them. And when they steal his stuff, he gets on their case. Because I can set up an Opera News account, take a story written by Marietta Lombard, cut and paste, put it under my byline and publish it on Opera News. Opera News is not journalism. So the South African, I'm not sure which site, there is a site called the South African, which is a pretty good site. And then there's a site that sounds it, that makes up a lot of stuff. But the South African, by the way, that website, I think it's .co.za. I think it's the next biggest website in South Africa after Media 24. I speak under correction. What was the other question, Becky?
So the other question is about sort of like, the chain of command. Where does the buck stop? As far as copy editors are concerned, what happens? Should copy editors rely totally on the reporter for accuracy?
No. As a copy editor, you should be checking whatever you can check, but certainly in the environment that I grew up as a young reporter, the sub would call you over. If the news editor hadn't, it shouldn't have got to the sub. It should have been checked at desk level, but it gets through. And sometimes you'll see the reporter sitting with the sub and you're saying, how do you know what you know? You've made a statement here. What proof do you have of that statement? So look, unfortunately, copy editor has also become fact-checking to a degree. I'd like to say take the reporter, what the reporter writes is correct, but that introduces a problem because you are the next line of defense. And after you, there's nothing more. So I know it makes your job worse, but you've all been in a situation where a mistake has got into print, and the reporter is blaming the sub and the sub's blaming the reporter. What I would recommend is when a story is being rewritten or heavily subbed, and I know Ground Up does this, the reporter sees the sub copy because errors are often introduced when you're cutting something down from 1,000 words to 250. There's a good chance that you may introduce an error. And to save everyone pain, rather let the reporter check the copy. So when you're approaching an expert, be sure that they are neutral and objective, and they've got a good academic track record with published research. Now, there is a news site called The Conversation. And The Conversation, what they do is they have editors who work with academics, and they help the academic turn the reporting into human. And there's always a link back to the original report, but what is published is very accessible and understandable. So where previously research might have been read by half a dozen people, it could be read by tens of thousands of people. So it's the conversation.com. When you go to their site, look for the drop-down menu. They're all over the world. Find Africa. And there's a search bar where if you're looking for an expert in hydrology or an expert in animal husbandry, I don't know, pick a subject, search. If they have published an academic on that subject, it'll take you that research and it'll also help you contact that person. So it's a great way of finding contacts. Now, remember, someone reading your fact-checking report should be able to access the same claim and reach the same conclusion by following your process. I urge you is when you publish online, wherever possible, hyperlink to your source. Okay, we'll take a break after this. So now we're going the no route. So no, you can't fact check an opinion. So what you can't fact check is you can't fact check an opinion. because my opinion is my opinion. You might disagree with it, but it's my opinion. It's not the facts, it's an opinion. And very, very often people will say, yeah, well, I'm entitled to my opinion, and I have a stock answer for that. Of course, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. There's only one set of facts. So you can't fact check an opinion, and you certainly can't fact check a claim about the future because it hasn't happened yet. So those are two things that you cannot fact check. So our next is identify the original source. Define the terms and concepts within the claim. So no just stops right there. Get official scientific or legal definitions for all the terms or concepts in the claim. And work out, does a claim relate to a specified time frame, origin, or demographics? That will help you get to it quicker. Once you've approached the experts, inspect the evidence using the latest reliable data. So build up a library of quickly accessible, reliable data sources. So I have got, I'll show you just now, I've got tools that I can easily go and check up on municipal data, on spending in municipalities, on CIPC, all that kind of stuff. If you've used it once, just put in a folder or put it somewhere where it's easily accessible. Once you are finished, once you've got all your evidence, you set out your evidence. So now what you're going to do is, you're not writing a story, you're doing a fact check. Explain step by step how you reached your conclusion. So explain to people why we've reached a conclusion that this is not true, or it's half true, or it's a total lie. Always hyperlink to original sources and include citations. So I don't really go for citations, that's more academic, but what I do is I link to source documents so that someone else can come behind me and say, I don't believe you, and they can go and double check me. You then need to tell the person you fact checked of your conclusion, particularly if you find it's not true. And you go to them and you say, look, I have checked, this is not true. They need the right to reply. Now, what happens if you haven't been able to verify the information, or not all the information can be verified? You then need to explain to your reader what steps you took to try and authenticate those claims. Readers need to know how they arrived at your conclusion. They don't know you. It's not take my word. It's this is my proof. Don't take my word. Here's my proof. Shall we take a little break, Becky?
Yeah, we've got one question in here that I think we can pick up with when we come back from break. But I think this is a great breaking point. We have a lot of you on here today. I'm so excited to see that so many people came out live. And I think one of the huge advantages of coming live is the ability to ask questions, the ability to discuss what's going on in your newsroom with your stories. And so really encourage you to make use of the time. If you already have questions you're thinking about, you may want to drop them into the chat now during our break. Otherwise, you can drop them in when we get back. And otherwise, if you just want to share one takeaway, if you've been taking notes, just look over and say, what's one thing that I'm going to use moving forward? So I'm going to pause our recording now. You don't have to do anything. Just let your computer stay here while you go and do what you need to do. And we'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks so much, Ray. We'll see you all in just a few.
Thank you, Becky. I'm just going to look at those questions. Push can. Mhm.
Hi, everybody. For those of you who are off in the room, we'll call you back. Just here, I hope you can hear my voice. Come back. And I'm just going to start recording the second. Oh, I thought I had paused and maybe we didn't. I'm going to stop real quick and then restart.